We are live.
Awesome.
I feel like we should have Conrad on the show.
Why?
Should definitely have him on. I think he was a great person to talk to about the pros and cons of formal education.
Yeah, actually, it was
The
pretty cool.
discussion I had with him was really good.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, so yeah, that's what we're talking about today: pros and cons of formal education, or maybe different kinds of education. But I wanted to kind of try and stick to my personal experiences because I haven't done a ton of research into what the best form of education is. All right, so I don't have an ideal system. I don't know, but I know that my experience. So I went. I'll just tell you where I came from, and you tell me your whole school experience. So I went through like a ton of different schools. I went to a Montessori pre-K, which
Yeah.
is so let's say ages 3 to 5, and it's supposed to be some kind of like it's the kids who want baby Beethoven, right? Or the parents who want like baby Beethoven for their kids, like
Right.
like learn to play music and like do all kinds of stuff. Like it's definitely not like your normal public school at all.
Right. So your
Right.
parents cared about you and wanted you
Yeah.
to get
Yeah,
it.
yeah. Well, and my parents were heavily involved. Like they'd be there. There's actually I think there's almost always one of them there, and it was the kind of place where there was usually most kids had a parent there a lot of the time. Do you know what I mean? It was the space. It was private, so it was large and very accommodating, and so like
Right.
parents would be there. It wasn't like a leave your kid here, for as long as you want kind of deal.
They actually encouraged participation in it.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, that's pretty good.
So and the Montessori has in some places, I don't know, I'm sure it's different everywhere you go, but it has a really good rep in some places. I think there's problems with it as you go through, but whatever. Pre-K, I don't know. I think it was pretty good. Anyway, I'll get into details of each after, and then grades kindergarten 1, 2. I went to just local, looks like a prison public school, like made of bricks. It's literally got like arrow slits in the
Yeah.
walls, to fire arrows at in case I guess
Made in the
anarchists come or
50s,
something.
asbestos everywhere, right?
Oh yeah. No, it's got asbestos, and like it literally, like it's it's made by people who made prisons because you can't climb out the window. Like there's not enough sunlight in the classroom for a kid to be able to climb out the window. Like the windows are all either sealed or they only open like 3 inches, or it's like literally an arrow slit. Like
Right.
it's like 5 inches wide, the entire window. So there's public school. In grade 3, I went to a gifted charter school. So if anyone watching doesn't know, I've actually probably a lot of people don't, but charter school in Canada is where I think they have to petition or ask the government for money as if it's public education, but they come in with a private charter. So they're allowed to not just be a regular public school, but they have to have like a specific mission statement, like they're fulfilling a need. So some will be like a special needs thing, some will just be like super directed learning for like athletic kids. This one was a gifted school. Like they wanted to try and bring in kids who weren't fitting in or getting along in regular public school and had higher than average abilities or understanding and be able to challenge them, kind of thing, right?
Right.
And grade 3 was the best year of my school by far, of my entire schooling experience. It was the most advanced. It was the most advanced emotionally and socially, and the way it worked was the most advanced. Then I went to a Catholic school for 3 years.
You went to Catholic school?
I went to Catholic fine arts school for 3 years. So like that's why I say like I've experienced everything this like schools has to offer. I actually know quite a bit about it. So
Yeah.
Catholic school, and like they were disciplinarians. If they could have hit us with rulers, they would have. Fortunately, I was born after that time. But if they could have hit us, like dude, like the teachers wanted to. Like the teachers that were teaching me, they had hit kids with rulers before. Do you know what I mean? Like that's how close we were to it. Because I think the Catholics managed to grandfather a lot of that in, even way after it was not the norm for public school. After the Catholic school, where did I go? Back to the charter school for 2 years because there was a mix-up with their charter where they didn't get it before, so I had to leave. So they couldn't keep going because the government didn't approve it. And then the government did approve it again 3 years later. So I went back, but then it went downhill because the person who started the school got cancer. And then it got taken over by someone who's like, yeah, we just need to have more traditional forms of education. You're like, what? The whole point was to depart from that. And then, after that, I went to the private school. That's where I met you. I went to private school for 3 years, 9, 10, 11. and then back to the local brick wall institution for 1 year to finish off my high school,
Right.
which is public school, and that was interesting. Let's hear your brief rundown here.
And you also went to Sound College, right?
Oh yeah, I was just talking about the education.
Oh, we're just doing the government mandate.
Sure, yeah, I just wanted to stick to that actually. Yeah.
Okay, fair enough.
We can talk about universities later, but I feel like it's a kind of its whole own topic because it's actually very different from public school.
Yeah, no, it's true. It's true. I went to preschool. It was immersion, so I started learning French there.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I didn't spoke any French.
Yeah, I used to speak it fluently. Now I have about half my words left. But I got held back a year because my mom wanted to make sure that I was old enough.
Big fish, little pond.
Yeah, right? Because I'm bigger than everyone, and I can't get picked on if I'm the biggest kid or something like that. Which kind of worked, but kind of didn't. Because she sent me straight into public school, which was a French immersion program. So
where was that? In the Southwest?
Kingsland Elementary. And
oh yeah.
I got there when they had this big wood playground, and like the year I left, they tore it down to put rubber mats everywhere.
Oh yeah, we were right in the middle of that. I saw those transitions. I got splinters, man, and I fucking loved it.
Dude, I must have concussed myself like 13 times on that thing. It was the greatest. I figured out a way.
Said that right now,
what?
I felt that feeling. Just as you said that right now, I felt that feeling where my eyes kind of swim and my nose hurts because I've hit my head so hard on something.
Yeah, it's
awesome.
great.
Awesome. We'll get into that. I'll let you finish your synopsis. Yeah.
I went back about 10 years later and hurt myself really badly jumping from one side to the other. I must have been immune. Like I was just like, oh, I've done this before, and I tried to do it. And I fucked up my knee. But
awesome.
Yeah, then I went under protest and duress. I went to private school.
Yeah.
My brother already went to it at grade 7.
Oh, grade 7, not till grade 7. Okay.
Yeah, grade 7, and then I stayed there for the rest of my career.
Yeah.
Graduation.
And give me some brief, like obviously I know a bit of it, but we're talking to everybody, so give me some brief rundown of what that was like. Just an overview. We'll do a couple details in a minute, but you know what I mean. Just give me like a rough.
Yeah. Okay. Well, my life was plagued with terrible teachers. It was absolutely plagued.
In the private school or in both?
Both were horrendous. Like, absolutely horrendous. Like, I remember having the best grade 1 teacher ever that made me like engaged and love everything. And halfway through, some bitch came back from maternity leave, and like, like there was nothing I could do to please her. She hated me. She hated everyone. Like she was just a miserable person. I remember figuring out what a hyphen was, so that I could spell half the word on one line, then hyphen, and go to the other one.
I remember that.
She didn't even acknowledge that I did anything. And I completely shut down, like completely. The next year I got up.
But do you know how fucking insane that is right now?
Yeah.
No. Do you know how insane that is for me?
How?
No joke. Grade 1, same goddamn thing. I was the only kid in the whole class who knew what a hyphen was. Nobody else knew what a fucking hyphen was.
Right.
I was doing like hyphens and like Oxford commas and shit.
Yeah.
Like, and like not that I would call it an Oxford comma or anything, but you know what I mean. But I was like figuring out like spacing words with commas and like that, like, and I got nothing. No, nothing. I got no recognition.
Yeah. And so my mom made me take flowers every year to the school or whatever to give to the teacher at the end of the year. And that was the first time I refused to take flowers and give it to her. I was like, there's no fucking way she's going to get this. Absolutely not. Yeah. The next year, I had a fantastic teacher who pulled me out of it. For the first month or whatever, I was acting up and whatever. And my parents, they were having meetings, and finally it came down to, like, she looked me in the eyes and said, I'm not Madame Deb. I am not her. And then we were perfect, and I got back on it. Grade 3, I had 2 teachers that alternated on and off, and they were terrible. And then grade 5, I had one that picked on me, almost, because I was violent. And I always got reports that I was playing with guns with my hands and stuff like that when I was a violent kid or whatever. And
Well, I mean, even right now, I know this isn't the time and place for it, but I kind of want to correct you because, like, you are not violent. You, I
even
mean, like, I
slightly.
mean, like, first of all, for anyone who did, like, people don't know us, who don't know you, like, I've never seen you fight or hit anything. I've never seen you hurt a single thing in my entire life. Like,
Yeah,
I've never seen you do anything that even hints at a desire to hurt something.
yeah,
Like, by far, you're the less aggressive than the two of us. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's ridiculous. Like, it's I'm still someone who I've only ever like arguably been in one fight ever.
yeah.
It's and you're the less aggressive of the two of us. Like, so I find it so hilarious that they would call you aggressive, and that B would be based on something like playing with a toy gun. It's just
Right. But yeah, my public school wasn't fantastic at that. It got worse in a way when I went to private school.
what
Like
did.
there was the teachers
Okay,
and
really?
the schooling. Yeah, well, it's I think it's because I was more conscious of it. And I
Yeah,
was more aware of like rather than like when I was in grade two, I just hated everyone and like that was just the
right.
way it is.
Yeah,
You know, now I could actually put thoughts to
right.
why I hated them
And put
and see the
responsibility on.
injustice and have legs to stand on rather
Yeah,
than just being dismissed outright for being a rebel or whatever, two
yeah.
years old
Just
or
you're
whatever.
a bad attitude, bad kid,
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah, I just had to get over it then. Now I could articulate it and I wasn't going to tolerate it. I got
And
one
assign
teacher,
responsibility. That's huge, right?
yeah, I got one teacher fired in grade, actually, yeah, in grade 8 or grade 9.
Oh, mine was in grade 7.
Shock A at Waco. You were probably there for that. Were you there for Shock A? Oh no, that was grade 8 going into grade 9. I
So
gave her
who was he? Let's hear the story. Let's hear the story.
um she was absolutely terrible. Objectively bad. Like she kept saying like work smarter, not harder kind of thing. And then all she'd do is like make us grade each other's tests or whatever. Like she'd just give us a syllabus and we just do problems in it or whatever for French.
Yeah.
And we'd correct our own, and she'd do the honor system, and we all cheated.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't we? And I got caught a
Like
couple times, and was like, "Fuck you," kind of thing. Like, then make actual homework where you grade it, kind of thing. And then one time she made me. We had to write sentences in French, and she checked for spelling or whatever.
Yeah.
And I got one word wrong, and she said you have to write it out 10 times or whatever. And so I was like, okay, I get it, whatever, whatever. So I write out the word 10 times that I got wrong. She's like, no, all the sentence. So I gave her the Hitler salute, and I said, jawohl, mein Kommandant, or whatever. I got kicked out real fast. And like it just downgraded from there because we just fought the whole time. The rest of it, and like at the end, she wasn't renewed her contract the next year.
Mine was we directly got a teacher fired. This was at the I don't even want to call it the gifted school because in grade 3 it was the gifted school. Do you know what I mean? But when I went back for grade 7, 8, it wanted to be, but it no longer was. And it
Right.
wasn't just because I was older. Other people who were involved in the project, like objectively, everyone kind of agreed that's what happened. But so at this point, the standards had changed a lot. It was a different place, and we had this teacher. I want to say Mr. Waters or Walters, and he was a fucking mustache guy who talks in fucking cliches like give two guys the work and they'll do it half as fast. Or yeah, like like just these stupid fucking like not even good cliches. You know, like not even like good aphorisms, but just like dumb. I want to say like country logic. You know what I mean? Where you're like, oh, that's the down home way of thinking kind of shit. But he would use that and everything else as an excuse to bully and intimidate and just make fun of kids.
Right.
Like he would just straight up make fun of kids. Like a kid who didn't finish something, he would make fun of them, and it would be under the guise of this like, oh well, where I come from, hard work and blah 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 blah. But he's basically just standing in front of the class talking for 5 minutes about how somebody couldn't finish a problem or couldn't do something, right? And it was like the exact,
I hate that.
and it was the antithesis of this school, because the school, the whole philosophy, the whole motto, the whole thing was, you guys are intelligent and capable. If you want to advance or go somewhere, go there. Like it's more or less work at your own pace, but it's not work at your own pace. It's work in your own direction.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's not really about keeping everybody in line. It's about throwing people who need more to chew on, and not just more like numbers and work and papers, but like information. and subjects. You know what I mean? Like you can work with kids of different ages. Like it's you know what I mean? It's not about sticking to the program. It's about
Right.
going off book. That's the whole fucking point. And so he was on book, right? And he was the guy. And so I always, and this has been a thing for my whole schooling, I do group projects. I don't fucking work on my own. I don't want to work on my own. It's boring and shitty. I don't want to sit in a corner and stare at a piece of paper. I don't give a fuck. I'm a social
Yeah.
creature. And like I do better and I perform and I make amazing projects and I do awesome work with other people. So
Yeah.
like, sorry, but I'm just gonna do that. So anyway, he lost it at me and my friend Jesse. And my friend Jesse had been in a car accident when he was 3, and he had a scar all down his face. And I mean like a huge fucking scar. Like it's like
Yeah.
like the skin's like welded over, you know, the whole way. So
Right.
obviously he'd been teased his whole fucking life about it. You know, it's a really obvious thing to not fucking make it talk about, right? Like I can talk to him about it, but not if you're not his friend. This Mr. Waters, I can't remember the exact comment he made, but this was the tipping point because he'd been making fun of us. He'd called me stupid and lazy. He'd called multiple kids stupid and lazy on different occasions in class. And then he says something to Jesse, and he says something about fucking Frankenstein over here, or something like that.
Oh my god.
To like a 13-year-old kid, the fucking like facial reconstruction. Yeah, I can't remember if it was like Frankenstein or you know what I mean, or like Scarface, or you know, like just like straight up like fucking bullying, mean-spirited shit to somebody who has an obvious, really difficult fucking problem.
Oh man.
And Jesse actually, and he was usually a fucking mouthy, shitty kind of attitude kid anyway, but I think he like shut down. Like he kind of like, you know, because he's been abused over this so many times, he kind of shut down. And I said like fuck you and like fucking flipped a desk or something, and I stormed the fuck out. And I was just gonna hit him, like I was gonna throw something at him, but like he was also pretty fucking big too.
Yeah.
So I was
No,
scared. But I was like, you know, and I whatever. I didn't want to get kicked out. I was like fucking fuck you, stormed out, made a big scene. And yeah, made a huge fuss. I told Jesse's mom because he wouldn't tell his mom about it, and she fucking got in contact with the school, and the dude was fucking fired, like just completely outright fired eventually. And I was happy. I was like, awesome.
Where the fuck do they find people like that? Like, cause I actually I find it hard to find miserable people to me. Although I am a decently sized person,
Yeah.
you know, I guess it's different if it's like a bunch of kids versus you or whatever. You could.
Yeah.
It's a lot easier to be a dickhead to them than it is to be to me. But like, I just don't see people like that ever.
Well, that's the thing is I think you and I we both, or everybody. I mean, you underestimate what happens. I want to say behind closed doors, but it's when there's a power imbalance, right?
Yeah.
We underestimate what happens. I'm a grown man, pretty big. You're bigger than me. You're a big guy. It's like people don't see it, but the things that happen in schools. If you could be a fly on the wall and not sit in the class, because remember when there'd be like a sit-in, like a principal or something?
Yeah.
Do you remember that? Like you'd be in a class and there'd be like a guest instructor or principal. It's like there's a fucking Photoshop filter on the whole class. Right? Like
Even
it
I
represents.
behaved better because he was there.
Yeah, right. And you don't give a shit about what his agenda. Like he has nothing to do with you. But
Yeah.
there's a fucking sepia filter on everything. It's like nostalgic, happy childhood, learning in a classroom bullshit. And like no matter who the person was, even if we don't know who it is, it might be a parent, it might be an auditor, it might be a random like student teacher. We have no idea. But the second there's another adult in the class, the entire dynamic changes. Think for a second of how scary that is.
Yeah.
I'd like to think that at most points in my life, with obviously a couple of private exceptions, anybody could walk in and my behavior wouldn't change substantially. I'd like to think that. I'd like to think that whatever I can do can hold up to this. Most of what I do can hold up to the scrutiny of a random stranger.
Yeah.
Like I could be having any conversation at work or at home with a friends. I could talk to anyone anywhere, and I could hold up to the scrutiny of another completely arbitrary person walking in and just listening.
Yeah.
I'd like to think that because I stand by what I
on the
do.
topic, but yeah, I see what you're doing.
No, of course. I mean, if they're a person who's easily offended, it's, you know, whatever. But I'm just saying, like, in general, I'm not ashamed of what I say and do.
Right.
Right? Like, my interactions with my friends, it's not like, oh, if your mother could watch, you know, what would she say? It's like, you know, whatever. If a random person came in or if, you know, someone you care about came in, I wouldn't change my behavior substantially most of the time.
Right.
Obviously, like, my sex life or something notwithstanding. Like it's obviously private. But
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
but any of my interactions, and that's what my point is. Think of how scary it is that in schools, that as soon as there was another adult in the room or another like adult consciousness, everything changed. It wasn't a small change. Everything fucking changed.
Yeah.
It's like you had this toxic, and now I'm sure you've experienced it too, but you've been in a toxic relationship. Everyone has, or most people have at some point. You've been in a relationship, and you kind of your blinders go on. You've got this other kind of filter over your vision, right? And like it's like you can't quite think straight. Like you're just doing stuff, and you're just kind of reacting to these like weird emotional interactions. That's what classrooms always felt like to me as a kid. And then when a stranger walks in, all of a sudden it's like, whoa, right. This is actually a place in the world with other people, with the same rules as everywhere else.
Yeah. No, and to add to that, I mean, it's so terrifying that you're such an impressionable age that, like, like thinking back on my grade 2 experience or grade 1 rather, where she's like an absolute bitch to me. I still remember. I don't remember specifically what she does because it's so young, but like I remember the feeling that I had from it.
Of being terrified or whatever.
Yeah, to make that like 1/7 of my life was in that class at that point. Like
at that point, yeah, right, yeah. At the time dilation
of development was through that lens of like not, I don't want to say abuse, but like the next thing to it, it probably was abuse. If I could actually go back and see it, I probably would have stood. Like I wish I could go back as me and see myself in there, like be like, "Yo, bitch, you calm the fuck down and you stay back in there. You do not yell at that kid."
Yeah,
not acceptable.
And that's the thing that always opens me up to those feelings and remembering that stuff is seeing now how I treat someone who would treat a kid like that in front of me. Yeah. It's like, wow, that's unacceptable. Holy shit, is that ever not okay? Before we get too off that, I want to stick to the school thing, and I wanted to go, like, let's do, if you can remember, obviously you'll come up with a better one halfway through, but your worst teacher, worst experience, best experience, and then I'll do the same.
Okay.
If you can't think of one, I'll take over. It's fine.
Worst teacher was a little more recent, I think. Not mostly because I've lost memories of before, but it was this my science teacher. She went at grade 10.
Yeah.
She went at an extremely slow pace, and was very poorly equipped. She was young and really, really ugly, and not.
I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, she was not capable of maintaining or controlling a classroom whatsoever. I made numerous deals with her because I actually read a book and it pretty much gave me all the science information I needed till I graduated. It was A Brief History of the World or something like that.
Yeah. I don't remember the name, but I remember all the information.
Well, I built Bryson. Well, I mean, I'd had enough, like where like I didn't need to actually study anymore. Like I aced everything and didn't pay attention in class. She took the cake just at her absolute insanity. Like I didn't understand one of the topics I was supposed to do, like one of the projects. I didn't understand it quite right, but I nailed it out of the park. Like I made a really good one. It wasn't her exact formatting, so she gave me a 0 and called my parents to complain about how terrible it was. Like not even giving me like partial credit for doing something awesome. She just threw the whole thing out.
Yeah, she asked a specific format of question, and basically you kind of didn't care, didn't read it properly, just did something slightly different.
Yeah. And then like, she just made completely poor choices all the time. Like this one time, I was like,
encourage you to do work and to be excited about the topic, though. It's like the job of a teacher, I would assume.
Right? No. She was concerned about being right. Like it was more her ego trying to be like, oh, I'm the best teacher, and people have to obey me, and got all this power. Yeah. And she called my bluff when she shouldn't have. Like she tried to think, she thought I was bluffing about this one. I was sitting in class, people were goofing off, and everyone was pissed at her because it was near the end of the year. Like no one liked her, absolutely no one. And I was sitting back in class, and she was picking out people. Like she was like, "Okay, you guys knock it off. If you don't want to be here, then just leave or whatever." I'm like, put up my hand, like, 'cause like, fuck you if you're gonna offer me that. I'm like, will I get in trouble? She's like, no. So I get up and I walk out, and two people come with me. And like we're all like, yeah, we did it. We showed her. We're like,
Oh my god.
yeah, just running off adrenaline and shit. Like everyone's like, fuck you kind of thing, right? Like three people could leave in a private school.
Yeah.
Something's wrong with that.
Yeah.
Anyway, fucking, I get home, and by the time I get home, she's already called my parents, and I got detention. When I specifically asked if I was gonna get in trouble, and she said no. I'm like, yeah, it was just like there's so many things that were just unforgivable in that situation, and that was the worst. But it was like no engagement. She didn't care, and I don't even care that much about that because like, you know, I'm gonna learn anyway. Like I can't imagine being someone that's not as curious as me. But like surviving in a classic, like I read a science book outside of it because I was interested in it.
Yeah.
Like I'm surprised anyone walked away with a pulse or a brain from that thing. Like
I was gonna say I want to interject with a really funny interlude story about when I went back to public school for the first time. So I'd been at the private school for 3 years, and for anyone listening, it's like you know we like wore uniforms and everything was like it was formal. Like it was like if you show up to a class, you stand at the door and you wait till the teacher's like, yeah, you can come in, and you like greet them. You know what I mean? Like everything has like a formal atmosphere. Like there's a pattern and a system for everything. So I'm always someone who I really love and I thrive in sort of situations of politeness and formality to a degree. Like I like it. I like when there's a structure and a system for interaction. I really appreciate it.
Especially
so anyway, I went. Yeah, no, and it's fair and it's polite. It wasn't oppressive. But when I went back to public school for the first time, my first day, first fucking class, it's a school of 3,000 kids, right? So we go from a private school, I want to say 500 or something stupid like that. So let's say 500 kids to a school of like 3,000 kids, and it's this giant monolithic brick institution. I go in, I get my class schedule. It makes no fucking sense to me. It's like this weird grid, and there's things like it's not like a calendar in order. It's like a grid of events, and then based on which day you like find it, like battleships, what fucking class you're on. It was so confusing. So I show up at the class late because I literally couldn't find my way around the school. There's no map, right? I'm looking at door numbers, and then it's like, oh shit, I'm on the wrong level, right? So then I can't find the staircase to the next level because it's in a door that looks like a janitor's closet. It's like fucking Harry Potter in this shit. I'm like wandering around the school like, oh my fucking god. I'm the only white kid with dreadlocks in the whole school anyway. And I'm stomping around the hallways, having no clue what's going on. Finally making this other, I'm like 15, 20 minutes late. And I'm used to the private school thing where like, you're not late. Like you don't show up late. It's like, it's a deal. Like it's a big deal. Like it's it's not inconsequential if you just don't show up or show up late to the class, unlike public school. So I show up and I open the the door's like ajar, and I stand in, and it says Mr. Butterfield or Mr. whatever his name is, and I look up and it says it on his desk. I'm like, all right, sweet, I'm in the right spot. And I stand there at the door and I wait, and he talks and he talks and he talks. He goes on for half an hour, and I just stand at the fucking door because I'm waiting for him to greet me and allow me to come sit down in class. By this point, like, half the class is fucking turning and looking at me. There's like girls are looking at me, guys are looking at me. They're all just like they're not. I don't know if they're making fun of me. They're just like, who the fuck is this guy? I'm like, and I'm pretty tall at that age. I'm like 6'1". I've got big combat boots on and fucking dreadlocks and some fucking I don't know, black jeans or some shit. And I'm just
like, fuck it, I'm going to the next one.
But I'm standing in the doorway, and I'm like politely, and I'm also listening because but by this point I'm starting to turn really red. And finally, he looked over at me a couple times and then just kept going because I guess he just thought, I don't know, some crazy kid's watching my class. So finally, he's like, "Can I help you with something?" I was like, "Oh, hi, yeah, sorry, I'm just here, whatever," and like start giving him an explanation. He's like, "Yeah, just go sit down." And I was like, "Where's my seat?" And he's like, "What? Just go sit in a seat." No, get this. The story's not done. You're gonna lose it.
Oh man.
No. I sit there in class, and you know what? Just because I'm me, and I like talking, and I like engaging. As soon as I'm in there, I'm like, fuck it, whatever. He asked a question on the first. I just put my hand up and I answer it. I start talking in class and I start giving opinions and doing all this fucking shit. I get super engaged. I'm like one-on-oneing the teacher within 10 minutes, right? Like engaged, and everyone's like, "Who the fuck is this fucking weirdo, dude? You're not gonna believe this. You're not gonna believe this." Things slow down for a minute. We go to do some work. He says, "Pull out like a sheet because you have to like sign in or something. It's the first day of class, and he has to sign it to say you're there." And it's like I'm in the grade 11 class.
Oh man.
I had the wrong time period. I had the same teacher, but on a different day. So I was with the grade 11s, all the kids a year younger than me. And I was like, oh fuck, and I just turned beet red and I stood up and just walked out of the
Oh, what a start.
I just wandered in the hallway and I'm like, oh my god, what the fuck am I doing? I have no idea, but I was like too scared of the consequences to just not go to the next class. So I just kept wandering around and eventually stormed off and fucking found a different class that wasn't mine and sat down for the rest of the period. And I did, when the teacher asked, I just didn't answer him, and he's like, yeah, whatever, and didn't give a shit.
Good old public school.
Yeah, no, I was serious. I sat in like someone's random chemistry class or something. It had nothing to do with what I was supposed to be doing. Oh, fuck. Sorry, yeah, that was my, I had to tell that story. That might have been my best school experience ever. What was, tell me a good experience you had, one of the best ones you had.
Okay, wait, just before that, like, just because I thought about this, what are your thoughts about, like, the whole, like, whenever people say that you have to put kids through school, otherwise they won't learn to socialize, what are your thoughts about, like, the whole, is that like a valid reason to put someone through 18 years of this? Or do you want to get to this
15,000 hours is the number I hear Stefan say. 15,000 hours.
Like, were you well socialized in it? Like, I mean, there was still interaction, you know? Like, I don't know what I would be without it. It's hard to speculate on previous, but...
Well, that's, you know, it's one of those things that I do find it hard to speculate to because we just don't have any information. We don't have any information. The only people right now... Not the only people. The only noticeable group that homeschools right now is like crazy fucking fundamental Christians, and that is not a good sample bias for like what happened. Like that's its own that's its own hypothesis and conclusion right there, right?
Yeah.
They're not a control sample. There is no, as far as I know of, there is no westernized high IQ demographic. Right, like we're considered a high IQ demographic, like just Western civilization in general, like compared to friggin' Somalia or something. Right. There's no like Western high IQ demographic that doesn't have public school and that has like multiple alternative forms of education that are normal. Right. The only alternative education, like I said, even the gifted school, that's higher than average IQ, right? Like that's like, you know, whatever. But those were like super fucking weirdo kids, right? Because the kids who were just smart but could get along perfectly fine in school would just do it and do really well and keep going, right? The ones who are really well adjusted. So the ones who went to the gifted school are the ones who are really smart and are having some crazy hard time either doing the work or fitting in or whatever. So you get a bunch of really smart weirdos all in one spot.
Yeah.
It was fun. It was awesome. But it's not. That's not an example of what not public school is, right?
Yeah.
Every example we have is super crazy. So honestly, I'm wary to come to a conclusion about it. I've learned and I've heard a lot, like from Stefan and from other places, about the evolution of man and about how we're basically more predisposed to learning from our elders. Right, from like older, and obviously you'd have peers anyway, kids your own age and stuff, but traditionally, evolutionarily, we'd be learning from people older than us, more than we'd be learning from our peers. We wouldn't spend so much time with just peer-to-peer access without like influence from a role model. So that all makes sense to me, but at the same time, I've never seen anything specifically to back that up. I think it's correct, but I can't say that. I wouldn't like go off saying that this is the truth in the way because I just have no information.
Yeah. No, and I mean, one of the arguments that I've heard
Yeah.
is that and this is from like one of the homeschoolers from the anarcho-capitalist movement or whatever,
Yeah.
was that their kids didn't make friends their own age necessarily, but they made friends with everyone. So
Right.
rather than having like, and like, cause like for me, it's really well instilled in me that I
Yeah.
make friends around my age or very close to
Oh,
it.
okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Like, I don't really have really old friends that I hang out. You're better than me at this, because
Yeah.
like you
I
have
was gonna say
Eddie
I
and
do
stuff.
that a lot actually. So that might be an
Yeah,
interesting.
like, for me, like I don't have like I have people younger than me, but
Yeah.
I don't really have anyone really older than me that I hang out with, especially significantly older. You know,
Yeah.
it doesn't seem to happen for me. And like
Well,
one of their theories is that you just get socialized amongst your peer group that you have no way of relating to
yeah.
someone older.
Yeah. So I think my parents did a really good job of deliberately exposing me to their friends and just other people of age groups, and just I was just thrown in to socialize with them.
Actually,
Right.
yeah,
Like,
that's a good.
and they
Yeah,
did
my
it
parents.
deliberately. It wasn't just accidentally. Like they were like, "Dude, get out of your comfort zone. Here's a bunch of people. Go talk to them. There's nothing else to do. No Game Boy, no books. We're out somewhere. You're meeting people."
Yeah,
Like,
my parents did not do that at all.
no, yeah.
So that
It's a
doesn't
thing you
really.
have to specifically think about, right? Like, it wouldn't necessarily occur to you that it's necessary, because most people fall in the trap of thinking, well, school covers most of that. Now,
Yeah.
that's where I think the biggest problem, the biggest danger with public school is. I mean, leaving kids with random strangers seems weird enough in the first place. But the biggest danger, I think, is that I think a lot of kids can survive public school and come out very smart and very well adjusted if and only if their parents were super active and super involved and super on the ball in terms of exposing them to the right things at the right time, and like what's the word, decommissioning them, from school. You
Right.
know what I mean? Like talking about what they learned in school and what that means. Like, basically reteaching them everything at
Yeah,
home.
it's the supplementary education, not what we
Yeah.
get there.
Actually, yeah. I'm going to advance my conclusion a little bit from from what I just said. I want to say that I think that it's total bullshit. The socializing at school. I think that's total. I think it's total bullshit.
Yeah.
I think I don't think I'm not a big fan of the toughening up philosophy of life. I don't think people need to toughen up nearly as much as everyone thinks you do. I think you have to toughen up if you're gonna have to go to a fucking war or something, but I'm not going to.
Yeah.
And I'm never gonna do that. And I don't care. I don't want to be in toxic environments. I really don't want to train to be in toxic environments, right? I don't want to have to learn how to deal with bullies. I don't care. I'd rather just not deal with bullies. I'd rather not ever have people in my life who are toxic.
Yeah.
And everyone comes at it from the, and I used to be exact. Trust me, this is the opposite of how I used to be. Everyone comes at it from the, oh, but what if X happens? Like, yeah, okay, well then I'll deal with it. I'm not going to be incapable. I'm just not going to be like a specialist in diffusing shitty people. I don't care. I'll just deal with it however it happens and then avoid it in the future.
Yeah, I mean that's the whole thing. Like the one advantage I have as an adult that I never had as a kid is I can walk away and never see the guy again.
Exactly. So why not, as a kid, just prep them for that existence? Give them a situation where they can just walk away.
They're going to be assholes, and the best way to deal with them is to not deal with them at all.
Yeah,
not like go out of your
course.
way to avoid them or anything like that, but just make sure that you don't interact with them.
Yeah, and yeah, exactly. That's it. And that's what we do as adults, right? I have work where there was a really shitty person at work for a while, and I just said I don't want to work with them anymore. So I didn't do certain things, and I didn't care. I did other work instead. Like it was the easiest thing I've ever done, and the fact that I was ever stressed about it is really ridiculous. Right?
Yeah.
And that's super easy as an adult. It's like nobody even cared, nobody batted an eye or even questioned me about it. They just said, okay, sure.
Yeah.
Like that's the people who generally hire me just said, sure, whatever. Like nobody gives a shit. And
well, that's the best part about the.
You don't have that option at all.
No.
You don't have that option at all as a kid. You are completely trapped inside of, you have to go back every single day and see that same horrible bully who's gonna fucking threaten to stab you with a pencil.
Yeah. Yeah, the toughening up is just complete horseshit. Like I can't believe anyone even like tries to use that as defense for allowing bullying to happen. And I like the shift that like bullying has taken though, like where it's now very, very unpopular.
Yeah.
To do, I think it's gone over the top because like.
Well, it goes over the top because what they've done is they've tried to add more controls to get rid of the problem. Whereas, as we just established, the problem is that there's too much control.
Yeah.
not in the hands of the children, right? We're trying to establish more rules and guidelines to stop bullies, and more like, don't do this, don't do that. Look, it's fine. Allow freedom of association with kids, and kids won't want to hang out with really shitty people.
Yeah.
Right? The reason that the kids cater the bully and he becomes king of the classroom is because they're all trapped in the classroom. I promise you, give them total freedom of association, and he'll have a little clique of really, damaged people, you know what I mean, who suck
Yeah.
up to him. And anyone else who's even slightly well adjusted, nothing to do with that. They're gonna go off and play with sticks in the woods somewhere else. They don't give a fuck.
Yeah, exactly.
They're just not going to. I know that because I've seen kids at play. So
Yeah.
I would say from the negative aspect, I think it's useless. I don't believe in toughening up, especially not kids. And from the positive aspect, I don't think you gain anything substantial.
No. Well, like since they gave up the charade of actually trying to educate people, which I mean they still do hold on to that
Yeah,
theory.
yeah.
And I guess you do get a basic understanding of English and spelling
I
and
think that's
math.
no. Yeah, no. I take completely useless.
Yeah. Well, even that,
Completely.
like that's under question. If you actually look at like what's coming out of classes or whatever, like it's barely literate, if not
Yeah,
completely illiterate.
yeah.
Um, the whole concept that where one of their things is called warehousing, right?
Okay.
Where it's like, well, what are we gonna do with this population
Yeah.
between these hours?
Oh
So
yeah, of course. Yeah,
we're gonna put them in one building so they can't get up to mischief everywhere else, kind of thing.
yeah,
Until they turn
yeah,
18, and then they can go on their own. And that actually is quite effective, apparently,
yeah. At
um,
what
at preventing crime.
though? You know what else is preventing it? Crime, not raising criminals.
Yeah, right. Well, I mean, it just seems so simple to, but like, I mean, that was their logic. At least we have them in one
Yeah, no, that's
place
the
so they
logic.
can't.
So no, and I agree. If you have a whole bunch of dysfunctional people who have to send their children to school because they're busy working two jobs and paying taxes, and they're dysfunctional parents, yeah, I think our public school is the most effective way to deal with that. But is it even? It's nowhere even close to optimal because like don't raise criminals and you want like it's the same thing as the freedom of association, right? Like we could argue all the pros and cons of like the best way to fucking stab out someone's eye if they try to attack you, right? Or I could just not go places where I get attacked and not hang out with the kind of people who are likely to attack and not hang out in the situations that are likely to draw physical confrontation, right? Right, so that's what I'm saying. Like, yeah, totally. Like, kickboxing is, arguably, if you're to pick one martial art, probably one of the most effective ones for smashing someone's fucking head in, right? Like,
Yeah,
it's definitely better than Taekwondo. But like, at the end of the day, who gives a shit? I don't really want to do either. Like, I like staying in shape, and we'll get to all that. But whatever, man. I don't want to smash someone's head in, and I don't want my head smashed in. So I don't really care to learn any of that. I'd rather just not go anywhere with people who smash heads,
right.
right? Which is
So,
that's how I feel about public school.
so you're obviously somewhat against schooling. What are some positives that you've got out of school? If you had to like, say it was good for this and this and this, what were the positives?
Positive things I got out of school. It's no, but see, it's hard to argue because I kind of have to argue them relevant to what I think would have happened if I hadn't done school, which is actually kind of easy for me to imagine because my parents were the type that potentially could have homeschooled or sent me to an alternative, you know what I mean, schooling facility. So I'm
Right.
just imagining there was some sort of voluntary community private thing that wasn't at all like a public school. So I'm just
Right.
vaguely imagining that. So I'm going to compare to that. So my thing with public schooling is I did meet every fucking kind of human you can imagine. Like poor, rich, like dysfunctional, functional. Well, I don't know if I met any functional people in my life yet, but like dysfunctional, somewhat functional, like good looking, bad looking, every race, every culture. Going, especially because I went to so many schools, I met every goddamn kind of human you can imagine. So
Right.
as an adult, nothing surprises me. I am not the kind of person who's like culture shocked. You know what I mean? I don't get like, oh, whoa, what are those people doing? It's like even just from public school, I've fucking seen it all, and I've been there, and whatever. Other things that I guess would be arguably good is, I could survive prison. and I'm serious because I have the ability to just
Not
sit
that
there and
far off.
shut
Yeah.
down, just shut off my brain.
Yeah.
I just
You
sit there
killed
and just
it.
shut the fuck down, and I don't think, and I don't do. And I mean, I do. It eventually catches up to you, but I can subdue my will for long periods of time. I think there is a work ethic in it. That's my one point of contention with other forms of education, but I assume that other people could solve that problem in the absence of public education. But the problem is one of motivation. Every self-directed school I've ever seen still pretty much fails.
Yeah.
Right? Like they still at the end of the day, no one really self-directs that well. Like that's the one thing that's kind of confusing because having a really brutal, strict structure does breed really successful people at certain things, right?
Yeah.
It also damages them irreparably in other ways. But it's very interesting analyzing that and trying to understand like the Asian parent versus Western parent. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like they'll have a brutal traditionally, obviously I'm not saying all Asians are like that, but everyone knows the traditional dragon mom,
Yeah.
the Asian dragon mom, and she'll have this brutal, strict structure and punishing and insulting and like, you must meet these deadlines, and it's like violent and they get crazy good results in those areas, right? Like they get really, really, really powerful results. So there is something to be said for an enforced structure and its ability to get a certain result. In the end, do I think it's worth it? No, I don't think it's worth it. I don't think. I think it limits your creativity and it limits your ability to. Creativity is all it is, but creativity cannot be underestimated. I think that the free market and the free exchange of ideas of the world is based not on skill but on creativity. I think that the ability for people to provide new and valuable services to one another, to create new products, to create new services, you know what I mean, to serve each other and to help each other and to make everyone's life better, relies 90% on creativity and 10% on hard work. The hard work is necessary, like you must have a hard work ethic, or like somewhat of a work ethic, but it's 90% creativity.
Yeah. I mean, that's one of the things is I think the work ethic is instilled by not jamming things down people's throats either. If I have a natural curiosity or I'm excited, and I speak right now from experience in my job, I'm excited and want to know more about what I'm doing. I work hard.
Yes.
I'm like it's not even work. Like I'm not driving. I'm not forcing myself to do something. I'm just naturally learning more and like expanding and like, oh, how does this work with this in conjunction with this? I think it's a lot more fluid of knowledge base is a lot easier to keep yourself motivated. And by keep yourself, I mean not even run into that.
I think so too, and I think it might be more true for adults, but it might just be true for kids too. I hope that's one of those things that I think in the absence of forced public schooling, it's one of those things that I think creative people like you and me, if given the time and opportunity, would come up with some really interesting solutions for it. I think there are some really, in terms of like you just said, providing topics and a structure where the kids can get excited and get really interested. Because you're not allowed to in school. That was my worst experience overall in school, was that throughout my entire fucking schooling, every class I was in, like I just said with that English example, within minutes I'm one-on-oneing with the teacher. Because I learn, man, and I'm a voracious consumer of knowledge. I love fucking learning things. And I need to talk. I need to hear what you say, and I need to say something. I need to have an expert correct me. Right? That's how the fastest and the best way to learn. And I'm fucking smart because of it. I've learned a lot of cool shit because I've done that. But man, did they hate that in school. Because it ruins it for the other 40 kids, right? Or it doesn't ruin it necessarily. If they're smart, they listen. It's probably cool. But it doesn't allow the teacher to follow the curriculum. It doesn't allow this class to go in the structured pattern.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing. It's communism on a micro level where everything has to be homogenous going out of it. And I mean the point, and it's a decent point. It's just like the Prussian government originally made school, and it was just to make sure that people were educated enough to be able to fit in the factories, or like nationalized enough so that they could go off to war for them and fight for their country.
Yeah,
that was their basic principle.
Yeah,
like their education, like for the aristocracy, was like on a way different level, right? Like it was like they get to learn all the classics and this and this, and this is for the baseline people so that they have a controllable mass of you know, like
Yeah,
educated
different
enough
population
to
to
fit
pull
in.
from.
I mean,
We're just coming up on time here. Why don't you give me, and by time I mean an hour,
okay.
but why don't you give me? I just want to hear like one more story from you. It could be anything.
Oh no,
If
I
you
had
want to
the
talk
last
about,
story. You give your story.
did you have the last story? I felt like my English
Yeah.
story took up quite a bit there.
Did it? Oh
Yeah,
yeah. Yeah.
I
Okay.
always have more. I always have more, but I tend to railroad, so I want to hear one from you. You
Um.
can talk about Miss Snowden, or the motorcycle teacher, or there's lots of you have lots of good stories. I know that I've heard from
Yeah. Okay.
you. Lots of good stuff. Whatever you want to talk about, or Mr.
Yeah.
Dogmeat.
I guess. I guess the best. The reason why, like, I mean, I don't think it was a complete wash is A, I can, for my education in public or whatever, was like, A, I did learn stuff from it,
Yeah,
and B, I found people along the way that really opened up the world for me in a
yeah,
very meaningful way, especially, like, considering all I had was my parents as a source of knowledge. If I didn't have something outside of that, I would be really lost. Like I had books and stuff like that, but like being able to see goodness as an example that it's not my parents really opened up things. And one of them struck me the most was Mr. Um, oh man. Uh, Bennett? Yeah, Bennett. Sorry, it was Mr. Bennett. See how much he means to me. I already forgot his name. I only had him for a year though, and I didn't get along with him at first because I didn't get along with most teachers at first when I met them.
or most people.
Yeah, or most people or whatever. I don't tolerate too much shit, and like as a teacher, that's probably really annoying.
Yeah,
Um, but I remember sitting down on one of my free periods, and he actually had a free period with me. So every now and again, he'd come join me and sit down on like the couch while I'm working or whatever, and start asking me questions and talking to me. And I thought it was really cool because he was actually showing interest in me, and he gradually got to a point where like he was actually quizzing me, and I think it was about like terrorists or something like that, and like
okay.
it was just a really
Like topical stuff.
yeah, like it was a moving experience where like this teacher who's supposed to be this authority figure, like you know, 10 times my level, is lowering himself to learn from me, kind of thing, and asking me questions about it.
Oh, so you mean like yeah, quizzing, not like trying to like gauge your knowledge, but trying to actually like hear what you have to say about it.
Yeah, like he was actually interested in like what I was talking about. Like I wasn't used to that because normally I'm really sensational about what I say, so I get people's attention, right? And this guy
Yeah,
was like, "Yeah, what about that?" Rather than just turning off and being like, "Get the fuck, what are you doing,
yeah, yeah,
right?"
yeah. Like I told you, I experienced a lot of shutting down. Yeah.
Yeah. And this guy, I like, I gradually like found out he was listening to me rather than just like letting me talk or whatever. And I'm like, what? Why are you listening to me? Like, what the hell? Like
Right.
you're an adult. What do you have to gain from me? You probably
You're
know
not
all this
used to your
stuff that I'm
opinion. You're
talking
not
about.
used to your opinions actually being heard.
Yeah, and he looked at me and he's like, there's like let's say there's an apple in the middle of the room. Okay, and at this age I can see it like this. And at this age I can see it like this, and at this age I can see it like this, and then, and he's like, I can't see the way you see it, so I need you to describe it to me. So I need you there to be able to help me understand what it is I'm exactly looking at. Because I
That's
was like that one day, but like I couldn't, and like I mean, the guy like brought like a tear to my eye. It was so beautiful. Like I mean, he may have had to been there or whatever, but it was like,
no,
oh my
no.
God, this guy's
That's really you've even told me that before, but even hearing it again now, that's such a powerful fucking statement, and
yeah.
it's so true.
Yeah, and like I mean, it hit me right here because like I didn't think he was listening to me, and B, he had something profound to say. So I was like, what, Jesus, like what, like this guy clearly knows something. I gotta ask him a question. Like, think of a good question to ask him. Like, and I was like desperate at this point because I was, probably
Yeah,
suffering from some sort of depression and anxiety from graduating and shit like that. I was like,
yeah,
what has meaning? Like, where should I take my life? Like, you seem to know something, just
yeah.
based on that. I've never heard anyone say something like that. What has meaning? And he's like, sighed, took in a breath, which was awesome because it kept me on the edge of my seat. And he's like, "Man, Jason, the only thing that I've ever done that like has brought me any sort of uh, good feeling or value to my life is helping people." And I
Yeah.
was like, "I'm gonna take that, And a year later, he died on a motorcycle accident in BC, which is a badass way to die. And I went to his funeral, and it was like one of the more life-changing events because rather than a funeral where we mourned him, everyone was celebrating the fact that he was a part of their life, and like
Yeah.
everyone would get up and just be like, "He did this for me, and he did this for me, and he is the
Wow.
best human being I've ever met." Like honestly, man, like I got up, told that story, and like like it was unreal. It's
Yeah,
unreal. And
dude.
like
No, I'm there with you.
like
Yeah.
as bad as I think the like education system is and how broken it is, I wouldn't have been able to get that. So I mean, it's not a good excuse to have it. It's just
Oh, it doesn't matter about that. Your personal experience is way more interesting. Yeah.
yeah,
That's fucking awesome, man.
yeah.
We've still got a couple minutes left.
You
I don't know
topping
if
it in an hour?
hey, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I don't know if I want to add anything to that because I really like your story. Maybe should I add in one more?
Sure.
Should I throw in a quick one?
Yeah.
That Apple thing though, that fucking sticks with me.
Oh yeah.
Like I want to sit and feel on that, but I want to add something else because I won't have another topic to add this conversation in again. I don't think. But it's the story of when I was in grade 3 at the gifted school, the good one, and my teacher was fucking awesome. Like he was the first teacher I'd ever had. It's only grade 3, but still, that's at that point a year, like you said, is a fucking sixth of your life or seventh of your life, whatever. He was the only teacher I'd ever had who I was allowed to read whatever I wanted. If I was reading a book, he'd go home and he'd come back the next day with books that were similar to that from his personal library or the public library or wherever, or the fucking bookstore, and bring me another book that was like that. Like that's the kind of fucking person. We're talking some next level shit.
You actually cared.
You want to learn about something, you learn about it, and like when you didn't do something, the punishment was always working out. We'd go for runs.
Oh my God, that's
Sit-ups,
awesome.
we'd do push-ups, and he wasn't like brutal about it. He
No.
wasn't like like making fun of you. It was always as many as you could do.
Yeah.
That was seriously. It wasn't a number. It was as many as you could do. Right? So if a kid can only do one, they do one. If they can only have one, he's not going to make fun of them. He's not going to hurt them for it. He's like, whatever. You try your best, and you do the most of that you can, and then you're done.
Yeah.
I mean, so if you wanted to, you can cop out of your own punishment. But he had this sort of way of saying it where you're like, that if you cop out of your punishment, you're cheating yourself, right?
The amount of respect that my man must have commanded.
Yeah, so we had these, sorry, I gotta cut my story a little quicker, but yeah, we had these projects where you could pick any topic, do whatever you want, and then you present it, and you have like months to work on it, right? Which I think now, I look back, I think that's a terrible fucking idea, but you have months and months to work on it. I had mine until the end of the year. So we had the beginning of grade 3 till the end of grade 3 to do one fucking project. And everyone was presenting theirs on a separate field trip. Every kid in the class had a field trip based around their project, right?
Yeah.
And on the field trip, they'd present their project on the research they did. I picked the Buffalo and the Plains because I loved Nose Hill, like this park near my house when I was a kid. Yeah. And we were going to go there and I was going to present it. And we go, and on the day of class, and my mom has packed me like a backpack. I've got a camel pack to drink water out of, and like a hat to keep the sun off my neck, and I've got like my archaeology kit or whatever. Like I don't even fucking remember it. I've got like all this stuff that she's packed me in this lunch and this whole thing, and all this expectation built up. And you know exactly how much I've done on that project. I have finished exactly one title page. I have a fucking piece of paper that says the bison of North America on it. I have nothing. I have had an entire year with constant reminders. My parents telling me to work on it, him telling me to work on it, and me just lying, just going, yeah, I'm doing it, and I don't do a single fucking bit of it. Not a goddamn word of it was written. Nothing is done. And I'm going to class, and my mom's walking me into the class. She never does that. She just drops me off at the school for some reason, and obviously I think she must have fucking known or something. She's
Yeah.
walking me into the class. No one else is. And she's walking in with me, like, up the third floor into the fucking building. And we walk in, and I'm having a fucking heart attack. My heart's in my throat. I'm gonna die. I hate this. This is the worst day of my fucking life. I mean, imagine when you're in grade 3 how big everything is.
Oh,
Imagine
man.
it's a year-long project, and you haven't done any of it. And every other kid, I'm literally the last kid in the class, because he keeps going, is yours ready yet? And I say, almost. He says, okay, we'll do your field trip later. And I've literally pushed the entire class back. It's now like one day from my birthday. At the end of the fucking year, this is my birthday field trip for my project. And he has explicitly told me if I don't do my project, I cannot go on the field trip. And the class will go without me to my favorite park on my birthday. And I'm standing there. And I'm dying. I think there's probably tears coming out of my eyes, but I have my hat on, and I'm not looking up. My mom says bye. She tries to like give me a kiss or something. I'm like, yeah, okay, but bye. Kind of like get out of here, which is normal anyway, Cause I'm like, get out of here. It's my mom. That's embarrassing. And I'm crying. I'm like, I can't remember if I was crying out loud or if I was just crying in my head, but there was like tears, and your face is I'm like contorted, and I'm dying, and he's like. He just looks at me, and he looks at my mom, and he knows I haven't handed it in. I was supposed to hand it in the night before, right?
Yeah.
I already have planned in my head, I'm just not going to go on the field trip. And I was like, and I'm just going to sit here in class and just be ashamed, but at least I'm not going to have to tell my fucking mom. I'm not going to have to, like, you know what I mean? I'm not going to live the full experience. And he looks at me, he looks at my mom, he knows I haven't finished it, and I'm just like, I'm dying, like, oh my god, please, 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 please don't tell. Please don't tell her. And he just looks at me and he just continues back at what he's doing. And I'm like, no, it's just the baited sentence. It's going to happen. And then I fucking go and I sit in class. He's like, so where's your project? And I just start crying. I just start bawling my eyes out. I don't know my fucking project. My mom's gone. I'm just bawling. And he's like, and he had told me a dozen times, Gavin, you are not going unless you bring the project. Just do something. Just hand me something.
Yeah.
And I fucking never did it because I'm the biggest piece of shit, and I just never fucking did it. And he goes, all right, fuck it, you have half an hour, you have an hour. He gets Hillary, who's the hardest working, the girl of the class. She does all her work. It's all in pretty fucking color-coded shit. She's like, you know what I mean, the ultimate fucking writer and executor of stuff. Sends me down to the library with her, and we pound out a fucking project in 1 hour. And it's like a 5-page masterpiece. Because he gave me that grace, man. That grace and that forgiveness like I've never felt in my entire life. I've never felt anything like that again. I have maybe once from you. But it's like I have never, like that kind of fucking grace and forgiveness where you have inextricably fucked up. It is no one but you. It is all you. You've been given every chance and every warning, and you still do it. And you know what? He's the fucking savior and the Jesus Christ, because he goes, I just do it here, and he just hands me the tools, and I just go and I do it, and I go on the field trip. And my heart floated for the entire day. I lived outside of my own body. I was a specter in outer space. I was so happy. And that's my greatest experience. We should probably cut it off pretty quick here. Do you have any last things to say? Or?
No, I'm gonna cry, man. Those two heavy-hitting ones right after another.
I know your Apple story. Well, I hope that leaves anyone who listens to this with some feelings or something. But yeah, so public education is interesting.
Totally.
I don't know how to end it because
no, that's it. You got it.
Thanks everybody, and good night. Peace.